Okay, I got some things to say today about more housing policy, and this one is a new proposal that is just as terrible as many of the others I've heard about. But let me start with a premise that's very important to me. First of all, taxation is theft. Second of all, your property taxes that are affiliated with your private property, even if you pay cash for a house, honey, it's not yours because the government says how much you're going to pay in taxes, and if you don't pay, you don't stay. That is how it's been for many, many decades. Right or wrong, it is what it is. I will point this out though, your local property taxes actually do give you a little benefit for your money because they take care of local schools, they take care of fire departments, local police departments, emergency services, some of your road situations. You actually do get some benefit for your local property taxes in many situations. Now, is it equal to what you are paying, what you're receiving? Maybe. North Carolina has a very low property tax rate environment on the balance as opposed to California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, which are very expensive. In fact, as a local realtor, when I get calls from out-of-state people and they look at the property tax numbers, I generally get a, oh, is that right? Because they're a little shocked by the difference between the high-cost states and a reasonably cost state like North Carolina. Now, that being said, property taxes are on the increase for almost everybody. Why? Well, your value has gone up with the wildly increasing market over the last few years. And you might think, but Leigh Brown, I haven't been buying or selling. Why is my value going up? Well, North Carolina in specific, you have to, by general statutes, revalue properties at least once every 8 years. So the longer that our authorities wait to raise it, the more painful it is. I frankly wish they would do it at a more frequent interval so it's not so much sticker shock, but here we are. Now, in the years that our property values have gone up, the tax rates can be moved around, but overall, it still turns into a higher out-of-pocket amount. The property taxes that you pay for most areas, you're going to pay a land value, that's the dirt up under your house, and then you're going to pay a structure value, which is the house that you have, and whether or not you've made additions or added a pool or an outdoor fireplace or done some upgrades to it, updated your HVAC, done your roof, those can change the value of your structure, which means that your number may even go beyond what your neighbors are, depending on what you've done to your house. Well, that makes it pretty challenging in a time like this because we have people who don't have any extra money thanks to inflation and thanks to terrible, terrible monetary policy that is being pushed upon us by the government right now. So we have new proposals that get floated all the time. I want to share with you the latest that I read about. This says you could replace the property tax because it's regressive and it doesn't adjust rates based on ability to pay. Well, no, it doesn't. The tax rates are the tax rates based on an area. It's actually fairly equitable. I don't like it, but it's equitable. I will say this though, tenants don't pay into a property tax system. So before you make comments on my video, if you're renting, you can just kindly sit out of this because your landlord's paying the taxes on the property you're in. Now, that being said, the article here that talks about a replacement for property taxes has this idea they've come up with called an LVT, a land value tax. And what they're proposing is that instead of taxing the structure, which may or may not have improvements, may or may not be upgraded and been taken well care of, let's just tax the land. All right, well, that seems like it might be reasonable until you do what you should always do with a news article, and you get it, friends. Don't look at the headline. Paragraph number 1 isn't doing you any favors. You got to read all the way down and make sure that your highlighter is in hand because there's going to be details that show up. In this one in specific, this article starts talking about tax burden disproportionately falling on low-income homeowners due to their proximity to commercial properties. All right, anytime you start reading that kind of word salad, you know where we're going. We're heading in a direction that wants to start creating winners and losers in society. And the reality is we have to, at some point, stop creating a class of winners and losers and just start looking at the whole picture. Because if we're going to talk taxes, tax rates, and tax plans, can we just start talking about cutting spending? Our government is the most wasteful organization I've ever seen in my life. And if you're not following Oilfield Rando on X, then you're crazy because he breaks down all the spending bills. And if your blood pressure is ever too low, honey, it will raise it right up for you. Now, here is where I want you to catch what's going on with this proposed land value tax. This says that a land value tax could break the cycle by shifting tax bases away from improvements and onto the land itself. Improvements means your house. This would be more equitable and productive. Okay, But then it says it doesn't punish homeowners or developers for construction, renovation, or improvements. All right? They want to make underutilized land more expensive. All right? Catch that. What is underutilized land? In the eyes of these economics professors, underutilized land is land that is not developed or land that is fallow. I'm just going to tell you, you can't tell it by looking at me, but I am a Christenberry and we are farm people. I grew up at my grandparents' house doing all the farm chores that were around, and yes, I learned how to drive on the hay truck, so I know the value of fallow land, because if you did not know it, you can actually hay fallow land, but if you don't let the land rest, it can't be productive. This is part of why we're having this discussion about regenerative soil thanks to RFK. Now, I want you to pay attention to this. They want to make the land so expensive that it would cause financial pressure to the owners to develop the land or sell it to someone who will. I'm going to tell y'all something. We don't need to develop every inch of land we have. Now, there are some parcels that should be developed, and we should learn how to say yes sometimes and no sometimes, but this is insanity. If you talk about developing every square inch of land, you are going to destroy what's left of our food supply. You will take away the wildlife and their natural habitat. You will then see yourselves in a very dark, distant future that's full of concrete and very poor agricultural output. And for the record, I love open land. I love my acreage because I like trees and birds and I like some peace and quiet. Not everything has to be developed. We're going to have to get our minds around that, and adding in a tax structure that's going to stop people from having fallow land and undeveloped land is awful. I just want to encourage you, if you hear about a land value tax, ask questions. Make sure your elected officials know exactly what this is. That this is not just some solution to low-income folks. This will damage our country in a way that we probably can't recover from. Pay attention, vote accordingly.